This is Ben Borg.
This is Katrina Borg.
This is Claire Green.
This is Maggie Morgan. And this is the More Than Macros podcast.
This episode of the More Than Macros podcast is brought to you by Married to My Macros, performance nutrition coaching. Married to My Macros is a personalized one-on-one nutrition coaching service providing the highest level of support to clients with the practical tools and accountability needed to improve health, physical performance, and body composition through diet. While this podcast will fuel your mind, let the team at Married to My Macros fuel your body.
So welcome back to the More Than Macros podcast. Today I'm sitting down with both Ben and Katrina for another episode of their IVF Journey series. We've been receiving a ton of feedback from the episode so far, from people reaching out, talking about their own experiences with IVF, infertility, and pregnancy, to people just reaching out to show their support. So we decided to record another episode, and we wanted to kind of revisit our primary purpose with doing this entire series, which was to open the conversation about fertility issues and IVF. And pregnancy in general, topics that are usually kept pretty quiet. And we hoped that it would make anyone listening who's gone through something similar or who's going through something similar to feel more comfortable to reach out and feel like they have that support system in place. So I think Ben and Kat have been somewhat shocked at the number of people who have reached out to you guys saying that they've gone through IVF or that, they were happy that you guys kind of started to open up that conversation. So tell us a little bit about what that has been like so far.
Yeah, I think over the last few weeks, it's been really surprising how many people, women particularly, have reached out to both me and Married to My Macros and kind of across all platforms. And what's been really cool is it's been, hey, like, congratulations, I'm pregnant too, but I'm really early and I have no one to talk to about it because I don't want to share yet. Or, I've had X number of miscarriages, or I just had my first miscarriage, or I've been going through IVF, or have had success with IVF. And so really, like, kind of the whole gamut. It's been really, really neat, in particular, to hear those, hey, I'm in my 5th week of pregnancy and I just need to unload and chat with someone, but I don't feel comfortable talking to anyone in my social circle. Or, like I said, those kind of recent miscarriages. That's been really cool to be able to open up and have those discussions with people. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've received kind of nearly as much on that end for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's been an awesome experience so far. So super happy that we started the conversation.
I think most of the feedback I received was actually from guys in regards to my description of the egg slicer incident. And most people tell me they're now off-boiled eggs or they can't eat salad.
They're like, stop programming eggs into my nutrition program.
But I think like that was, like I was a bit not hesitant to want to do this. I'm always one for trying to encourage discussion and bring light to issues within the community that probably don't get enough light. And I think that dealing with issues more so on like the testicular cancer side of things rather than the IVF side of things has been really good. And even if that is just making, my mates grab their balls and think like, maybe I should just go and get checked out, like just in case. Then like that's the most I could hope for is that my mates are looking after their balls, basically.
Well, they still have to.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I think the same as Kat. I think sometimes we, the irony of this statement, do a lot of things in terms of like developing our content and really hoping that people are listening or people are paying attention and people are, reading the blogs or the posts, whatever else. And, the amount of feedback that we've got, pretty specifically for this stuff shows that we do have a community that, is ever present and is always watching and is super supportive. And also that is still, even as hard as we're working to create that sense of community, still struggling with certain issues and feeling like, they're a little bit isolated with specific issues. So I think, as much as these conversations haven't necessarily been so easy to have, I think that the feedback that we've had just highlights how much we need to be having them and continue to have them. And for anyone that's listening and has been wanting to reach out or didn't want to reach out quite yet, or is not quite ready to reach out, that they know too that, you know, we're happy for you to do that. And the reason we started this conversation is to have those conversations. So if you are someone who's listening thinking like it would help to just be able to vent your story or just share your story with one of us or any of the MTM coaches, like, please do, you know, keep it rolling, keep it going. And the more that we can do this sort of stuff, I think the more you realize you're not the only person in the world to be going through whatever it is that you're going through.
I think that was, probably the take home for me. Obviously, we were quite open about it when we were going through it. And so we had a ton of support from our friends and family members and people that were kind of around us. But when we did the podcasts, it was, you know, the people that I used to CrossFit with 5 or 6 years ago and haven't had any contact other than we're still Facebook friends, you know, that have reached out and, oh my gosh, like I've had such a similar experience, you know, and that's been really cool too, that for people that, I think if you're in one of those settings where you don't have people around you who have had a similar experience, people don't know how to engage on it, but you've probably got such an extended network of people that do and have gone through it. And most people don't have a podcast to access that support. But realizing how much you actually do have in your extended community was really, really neat. And, you know, it just kind of like pushes the reason for sharing and being a little bit more open.
I think it's interesting in terms of phenomena like cognitive bias and like red Honda phenomena, where you don't really notice things until you start experiencing yourself how prevalent it is, and whether it's coincidence or whether that's what's occurring. But can't turn on the radio in the car without hearing like adverts for Monash IVF and Melbourne IVF. And, you know, like we said, once you start hearing, you know, how many people in your close group you had no idea going through it, and you start to realize that if it is such a big business out there, it's because there is such a huge demand for it, right? And if there's such a huge demand for it and it's getting bigger and bigger, that means there's more and more of us going through the same, you know, or similar situations and having those similar experiences. So I know even personally for me, what I thought IVF was and our experience of IVF, I thought IVF was IVF. It's just like one thing, right? So even my own learning experience of like, well, everyone's IVF experience, you know, being completely different, and there's a multitudes of, you know, just because you both, well, more than one party's going through IVF doesn't mean that they're necessarily having a similar experience at all. So even for my own kind of knowledge and understanding, it's been pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's been really neat too, like I said, I received a lot of messages from people who were in those very early weeks of pregnancy and weren't ready to share with anyone in their kind of close community. But I think because of the vulnerability of what we had put out there, and maybe because we were a little bit more at arm's length, felt really comfortable sharing with us. And it was the anxieties that crop up in early pregnancy, regardless of whether you've had fertility issues. And I know for me, one of the biggest things about my first trimester, I had said over and over again, like I didn't expect so much to change so early on. I really thought a lot of those changes would happen later in pregnancy, like different sorts of pelvic pain and things like that. And because we just don't talk about that first trimester as much, because so many people are keeping it under wraps until the 12-week mark or until that miscarriage risk decreases. And so to have people kind of come out and say, hey, I haven't had any fertility issues, but I'm absolutely terrified. I'm 6 weeks pregnant and I live in fear every single day. Right. And so just opening up the discussion, and I like 100%, I had said to friends, I was like, when do I go to the bathroom next and like not check that I'm bleeding, like in a year? Because this is gonna get really old. So I think, you know, it showed me a lot about how little we talk, generally speaking. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I think this is really, for me personally, like my real first experience with pregnancy. And even, you know, if I look at my close group of friends, I've got like one friend that's been a dad for almost a month, right? So like Summers, if you're listening, he's like the most experienced like father that
Which is terrifying.
In my like, close group of friends here. So even things for me like watching, you know, in our industry, like we see some pretty incredible transformations to like the human body over periods of 12 weeks and 6 months and a year. But it's been like,
He's choosing his words carefully.
I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but I'm like, I also can't think of really the right word to use, like the rate at which I'm kind of seeing change occur, and especially through that first trimester. Like, I think men for the most part are more ignorant than we are vindictive, but with even things like maternity leave and stuff like that, like seeing how hard Kat got hit in the first trimester, like I can't imagine. I mean, we have the flexibility with our schedule to be able to work for an hour, 2 hours, and then, you know, she could nap for half an hour or take 45 minutes to like feel sick and get over it and then come back online and stuff like that. How the majority of people go and work a 9 to 5 during their first trimester is just like beyond me. So I think as you know, as a man, as a business owner, and now having that experience, I think like that's something else I'm quite grateful for, because it has been able to open a few doors and be a learning experience. But yeah, like day to day is almost like Kat would, you know, go down for a nap and wake up, and it's like her physique would just change like drastically, like day to day. Like I've never seen anything like it, and she's just like, she's real paranoid that she looks fat and all her clothes don't fit, and I'm just like mesmerized. Like, it's just like you just keep changing. Like you literally changing before my eyes. It's been and I think it's like, for me, I love it. Like I think that
I'm glad someone does.
like, you know, I think obviously maybe more so than usual when you come off nationals weight cut and you're down at the leanest that you get to go straight into pregnancy, the change has been probably more drastic than it is for most.
And an IVF cycle, which has a big impact. Like that changes your body composition way earlier in the pregnancy than you would typically see as well.
But yeah, it's just been it's been a super incredible experience from more than one angle, for sure, and a lot of different angles that I probably wasn't expecting or anticipating as well. So yeah.
We talked to Kat a lot about like the anticipation and like living in fear and everything like that throughout the whole process of the IVF cycle. But we never really got to hear your side of that, Ben. So what kind of was your perspective there? Because obviously this is happening like to Kat physically, but I'm just wanting to know kind of what your perspective was during that period.
I am terrible at keeping good news to myself. Like when I have good news, like I want to share it. I want to share it with everyone. And I think trying to keep, like when we got engaged, I think I only got the ring like 2 days before we went away, and like only had to hide it for 5 days, and that killed me. Like to sit on being like knowing, I guess when you go through the IVF, like it's okay, very early on, you're like, okay, now we're chemically pregnant, and now we're getting a first heartbeat, but it's like, don't start telling people because you're still not out of the woods, and you're still not out of the woods, and you're still not out of the woods. And it was kind of like, I reckon it's probably one of the hardest things I've had to do is just be like, you know, so like
Reserved.
Yeah, but also like just so like giddy and jumpy and like just wanting to you know, I think the timing as well, that with everything that went on with having the cancer and then my dad passing away, there was also this element of just like just wanting to share good news, and it felt like it had been a long time since we'd had some positive news and some good news, and all the change that was really occurring in our lives for a certain point in time wasn't all that positive. And so I think that was probably the hardest thing, is like keeping it under the hat and keeping it under the hat and keeping it under the hat. But yeah, I think Kat wanting to take the, you know, the perfect photo of like the announcement on like the letterboard and stuff like that. I was like, come on, like just take the photo. Let's go. Let's get it out there.
So much trouble because it took me like 3 days.
You got 3 more minutes to take the perfect photo, and then that's it.
And then I don't care. Like it's just going up in text.
But even on that, like another thing that I wasn't expecting was as happy and as overjoyed and stuff as I've been. Like I remember when we were trying and going through that 6 months, and it felt like every time you jump on Facebook, someone else is pregnant and someone else is like, and you're just like, fuck, like I've got these feelings of being like super happy for whoever it is, but at the same time, like, come on, like when's it going to be our turn? You know, like, or you feel like, oh, super easy for them. You know, like people are telling you, oh, we just decided we were ready and come off birth control, and we thought we'd probably have 6 months while things leveled out, and it was like and it's just like, fuck you. And so I think at the same time that there was that excitement of like, it's finally our time, there's also an element of trepidation to be like, I wonder how many people are sort of seeing that and thinking like, fuck, like
they got married and they were pregnant right away.
Or like, you know, another one, you know, where another Facebook couple that's announcing their pregnancy, and like, when's it going to be our turn? And it's almost like you get mindful of like, where's the line between like sharing my excitement, but also not wanting to feel like you're gloating, you know, like to feel like you're rubbing in the fact that you're pregnant, when, especially after the last month of the conversations you have, when you become it becomes very apparent how many people are in your close network of friends that might be really struggling to get pregnant.
And I think we've been on both sides of the coin, you know, like we were going through IVF and the cancer. I can't remember exactly what stage we were at when, you know, one of Ben's really good friends announced their pregnancy. And we were like, I just remember we were at the depths of the IVF stuff. And I was like, I'm so happy for them, but I'm so wrapped up in my own shit that like, I'm happy for them, but I don't really want to talk about it right now. Like, I just don't have the energy to talk about it, right? But then at the same time, when after we'd done our embryo transfer and we knew that we were biochemically pregnant, and then we had a couple of our really good friends who had been going through struggling with fertility issues as well, and they're asking us like, how are things going? And it's, you want to share, but you're also so cognitive of what that feels like being on the other side. So it's tough. And I mean, the reality is that everyone going through any sort of fertility issue, there is a range of feelings around that too, right? Of course you're happy for your friends, but there's some people who are really like go through stages where they're upset and they're angry, and that's not wrong either, right? Like that you're just working through your own shit. So and I think there's a lot of guilt around those like feelings and emotions as well.
And I think even being within like the IVF community too, like when you start hearing stories of people who have done 3 or 4 or 5 cycles and had no luck, like there's almost like we got like pregnant on our first cycle,
like,
and it's like, does that,
why were we so lucky?
Yeah. Or does that, you know, really detract from our experience, or does that make what we went through any less than anyone else? Or it's almost like
it's just your
whatever,
experience.
yeah,
it's
exactly.
Just different.
Whatever happens, you just kind of always met with this like multitude of different feelings and different thoughts, and yeah, it's been like, I can't even think of the words. It's been an incredible journey, and to think of how much has changed really over the last 6 months, and then to think that like you almost forget that if everything goes to plan, then you're going to have a child. And how much do you think that is going to continue to change things for the rest of your life, right? We had dinner with friends last night, and they're kind of going through a similar thing. And you think like, you get all this pressure in like doing all this stuff for IVF and taking all the shots and making sure that you're controlling as many lifestyle factors as you can.
Very procedure oriented.
Yeah. And then it's like, you almost forget that the end result, if things go to plan, is that you're going to have a child, you know. And even now, I think, you know, seeing Kat get bigger, and, you know, last night she said for the first time, like, I'm not sure if it's gas or if like the baby's kicking, and I'm thinking it's probably gas, but like I think particularly for a father, everything's changing around me, but I don't necessarily feel like anything has quite changed for me just yet. Mm-hmm. So it's almost on that precipice of, although Kat's feeling all these changes somewhat gradually over 12 months, for me it's going to be more of those like, you're not yet a father, and then one day all of a sudden you are, right? So but I'm super excited, but it's just more of those things that it's like, shit, have we really thought this through? Like, are we really ready to do this?
Where's the emergency escape?
Well, step one, you gotta have, right?
Sorry, say that again.
Step one, you guys have bought a house, so that's, big
Yeah,
move.
we'll have somewhere to put said baby. So
No
furniture
or crib, but
Okay. We got a few months to go. We're good.
they just lie on the floor anyways, right? No, but even last night I'm like lying there and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that? What is that? Like that feels like sort of like gas, but not like gas I've ever felt before. And he's like, and I'm like, but you can't feel it from the outside. Like, so I'm just, and he's like, it's gas. I'm like, it's not gas. But it's just, yeah, it's interesting.
I think for me, probably the biggest milestone point to this part, which is ironic given like everything, was the 12 or 13 week ultrasound. 12 weeks.
Yeah, we did it like 12 and a half.
Where like it actually looks like a human baby, right? It's not just like a tadpole scan and they're like, oh, there's a heartbeat, and that's like literally all you can see is like this flicker on a screen, right? It's like, the baby actually looks like, a baby. And then they do this 3D imaging, and the doctor's like, all right, we need it to roll, or we need it to roll over. So I just fucking spoil it.
Spoiler.
And so she like gets a little bit more aggressive with the ultrasound one on Kat's tummy, and you just see this like little figure like kind of have a stretch and then like roll away from the impact. It's like it's like it's the most.
We're like, that's our child.
It's the most like, incredible like experience, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that was dissimilar for me, because even though like up until my gas last night, I'm just getting bigger. Like I'm just larger. That's it. Like I don't feel, it's like I have all these like aches and pains and I'm peeing all the time and I'm bigger and I'm tired and stuff like that. But it's like there's no direct phone to the baby in there. So it's not different from you in that sense.
Yeah.
And then you see it and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And
I think
the changes that Kat has been going through have been affecting Ben to some extent as well anyways.
Well,
we're getting less bed space, but
that's not really new.
I think the one thing that I've really noticed more so, which I'm not enjoying, is like the way that Kat feels at this stage about the changes that are underway. And I think it is incredibly hard when, especially for that 12 weeks, really, and doing the IVF and being on all that progesterone and your scale weight shoots up like 4 or 5 kilos in a couple of weeks. Before you start telling people that you're pregnant, people either think that you're injured or like maybe you're taking some time off, especially being like in that nutritionist kind of spotlight.
And a high level athlete. And people are like, what?
All of a sudden she's scaling the weight. All of a sudden she's like, finishing back in the pack and looking a little bit soft. And it's like, can't quite tell people, but I think it's been, Kat's like, I'm getting so fat. And I'm like, well, you're fucking pregnant, you idiot. Like, this is part of the deal. This is just as much a part of it as like having the actual baby. And so I think we're getting to the point now where it looks more like deliberate weight in terms of like, she's starting to get a little bit bumpy and it's starting to become more and more obvious, to other women anyway, because there's not going to be any guys that go, are you pregnant? Or
yeah.
So I think it's almost a relief to be, at that kind of 14, 15, 16 week now where you're starting to feel things. It's starting to become more obvious that it's like a bump and that you're pregnant and that you can tell people and that you can have those conversations rather than just feeling like, that bag of popcorn analogy that you used where nothing fits and you just feel like you're overflowing. And that's been quite hard to support her through that, because at the end of the day, like, to me, not that she hasn't changed, but like the way that I feel about her hasn't changed. And if anything, it's probably, brought us again, like even closer together, because it kind of just typifies like the sacrifice that she's you crying, Mags? It almost is like a sacrifice that she's made, for us and for the family. And it means that, she probably won't go to nationals this year, and coming off having won her weight class last year is like, you've gone from being the peak to all of a sudden like actively taking on this responsibility for our family to step down from that and step back from that. And it's,
families do, like, having kids does change priorities, and neither of us really know what that means in terms of training volume and schedule and Kat's athletic development, and will she make it back? Who knows, right? So it's, I think, like, you know, for me to hear after like all of this that she's like, oh, I'm more concerned that I look fat, is just like, when I look at her, I don't just see the physical changes, like the admiration I have for what she's going through and the sacrifices that, you know, she is making, and that it is a pretty big step to make to start the family, is just like, I couldn't be more proud, you know. And
admiration is not the word that comes to my mind when I look in the mirror.
You know, of all the weight fluctuations each of us has been through, you know, over the course of our lives, I think that, like, you know, my role really in this whole responsibility is to make sure that there's plenty of grilled cheese sandwiches and that sort of stuff, and that she's feeling comfortable, and to remind her that just because she's not feeling the best she's ever felt right now, that also doesn't mean that, like, she's destined to be 10 or 12 kilos up on her preferred walking around weight forever, right? It's part of the deal, and it's as much as part of being pregnant as, like, having the end result of having the baby. And I've always said, like, in terms of how our relationship runs, and in terms of how Kat is so much more useful in the day-to-day operations of our lives, if I could carry the baby, I would do that, because she's way more useful than I am. So it even, I think, like, adds to that, like, admiration in terms of, you know, the fact that she is able to continue to do all the things she is able to do and be 14 weeks pregnant. It's incredible. You know?
Well, we're 16.
16 weeks pregnant, even more incredible.
You know, details.
What's the date today?
Oh, that's a whole other question. I don't know. But yeah, and then I think too about, like, you know, that's also another aspect of that IVF experience that is talked about a little bit, probably not as much. And if you're someone who's going through 3 or 4 or 5 cycles, again, that experience is extremely different. And so I think about that 12 weeks where we weren't really telling people, and, you know, I was feeling so uncomfortable in my body. It's like, there's lots of people that go through 2 years of that, right, as they're doing cycle after cycle, and aren't comfortable to talk about it. So I think opening discussions up around that as well is massive, right? Because we were fortunate that we did have a pretty quick, you know, beginning to getting to this point, but it's not that linear for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And there was a lot for you guys leading up to that as well, like leading up to the start of even starting that cycle, right?
Things.
Yeah, a few things.
Yeah. I think it's been a hell of a ride, and to think really, like, that this is just the start for us, and all the changes that are yet to occur physically and mentally. And
I'm terrified we're going to look back in 2 years and be like, that was nothing.
Yeah. Like, remember when we thought that was the biggest? So yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. And I think looking back now, like, it has been a big journey, but I think it's been worth it, you know. When you make the decision that you really want to have kids, and you have fertility issues, like, you are signing up for, I think, that whirlwind of experiences, you know. And they're not all positive experiences, right? But I think that if it's something you want to do, like, if you want to have a family, and that's the line you have to go down, that's just part of it.
It's just part of your journey, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I think it does help to have people to share it with, you know?
100%.
So, and even early on with the cancer stuff, it was really Kat who was like, you need to start telling people, because I need to talk to people. And I was like,
it's not about his needs.
Like, I just want to, like, get on with it. Like, they're telling me we need to operate, let's operate, so we can, like, move past this and move on, because we've got, you know, too much stuff to do. So I think
we've got a business to run.
We've got a business to run. Let's get back to work. But I think that, you know, for Kat being able to have a forum and a platform to be able to share has been super therapeutic for her. And it's been super encouraging that other people are finding that same platform, you know, also therapeutic in some ways. So keep reaching out, I think, is the point here. Keep reaching out and keep having the conversation. And if you're someone who's going through it and it is successful, please share that with us as well. And if you're someone that's going through it and still going through it, and you need someone to talk to, again, like,
share it with us.
Absolutely.
And if you're a partner of someone going through it and you just like want to chat about something that's not fertility or IVF, please feel free to reach out as well.
And take a note from Ben's spiel there. That teared me up a little bit. Yeah, I think that was very sweet, Ben.
Thank you.
Well, well, thank you. I think we should definitely sit down again sometime soon, especially to talk to Kat a bit more about her just experience with pregnancy thus far. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more too about how nutrition is integrated into that and everything. I know the last time we chatted, the expectations that you set up for yourself and the reality of how that was playing out didn't necessarily align. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how that's been progressing and maybe even get
work in progress.
But I guess, is that all for now? Do you guys have any last parting words?
No, I think that's it for now. Just, keep sharing, keep chatting, keep sending messages our way. We're loving the conversation that's flowing. And so we just want to keep that going.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've had 500 plays on the podcast. So I know that's not anything like a Joe Rogan number or anything like that. But like I said, when I did the post, if 500 plays means that we've had, 500 conversations, or people are having conversations, even if it's someone listening to it and sharing it with their partner and that sort of stuff, which we've heard has been quite happening a lot. Like if it's 500 conversations that otherwise wouldn't be have, then all the effort and all the hours, Mags, you do a lot behind the scenes in terms of like organizing and calendars and editing and stuff like that. And I think that if, we get one play and we have one listen and one good conversation that otherwise wouldn't be had, I think that makes it all worth it. So to think that we've had 500 is just astonishing. And hopefully, like, here's to the next 500, and hopefully the more of these conversations we can have, the more comfortable people are about talking, and the more exponentially that we can reach and let people know, like, you're not the only ones going through it, and if you need to chat, like, let's chat.
Yeah. And I think too, not only for people going through it or who have gone through it in the past, but maybe for someone, I don't know, like myself, not knowing that I would ever have or run into any fertility issues, but if for some reason that was something that did happen later on in my life, I feel like I would have had this experience and listened to you guys go through it, and it wouldn't be as such a scary, taboo thing that I would be going through, and I wouldn't feel as overwhelmed maybe. But
and for the allies, right? Like the friends who have people going through it in their lives, and the discussions haven't been as open, and they don't know what to say or what to do, and like, hopefully it just provides a little bit more insight of, like we said, ours is one experience out of a million, and they're all different, but I think the overwhelming message is just like, support, chat, be there.
And I think that really is the hardest part, and that's kind of what leads to that isolation, is like the friends and family that like want to be there but don't know what to say and are worried about saying the wrong thing, and so therefore say nothing. I think that's worse. I think like say something, put your foot in your mouth, like say something, admit.
Believe me, we've got some friends with feet in their mouths.
But I think having any kind of conversation or no conversation at all, and if you know someone that's going through it and struggling, but just give them a hug, and it's it helps. Like it really helps when it's not quite sure what to say, but just knowing that someone's there is all that counts, really. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
And we will talk to you guys again soon. Of course, anybody listening, please feel free to reach out, obviously. We'll have our contact information in the box below, so feel free to reach out.
Probably the easiest.
Yeah, probably. All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one.